No backing out now. John Cornyn and Ken Paxton are locked in on the runoff ballot, both still waiting on a key endorsement.
I would welcome his support if he decides to give it, but that's up to him.
We look at the battle ahead and how Donald Trump could still shake up this Senate showdown. Corpus Christi could face a water emergency in just weeks. New models show supplies shrinking faster than expected. We look at the stakes and the options for action.
Situations like this are an opportunity for us to highlight the sexual violence epidemic that women and girls face.
As Texas cancels Cesar Chavez celebrations, local leaders say this moment must center on survivors, how politics, trauma, and community identity are intersecting in a statewide debate.
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Dylan McKim, filling in for Josh Hinkle. The showdown in the Republican race for U.S. Senate in Texas is officially set. Tuesday marked the deadline for candidates to drop off the May runoff ballot, and neither Senator John Cornyn nor Attorney General Ken Paxton backed out. That means both men will appear on the ballot no matter what happens between now and Election Day. President Donald Trump pledged to endorse one candidate and encourage the other to drop out of the runoff. But no decision came before the deadline. Senator Cornyn spoke to our team earlier this week about the absence of a definitive endorsement.
You know, he's called me a friend and an ally, and he's also said similar things about the Attorney General. So I don't know what his timetable is or if he ultimately will make an endorsement. In the meantime, we know that early voting starts in about 63 days. And so we can't afford to wait around, and we're not. We're continuing to work hard. I would welcome his support if he decides to give it, but that's up to him, and it's his timetable, and I understand and respect that. I'm in the race to win, and I'm confident I will win. I think I can help the entire ticket because I'll win by a substantial margin in November, as I did in 2020 when I won by 10 points, which will help all of the down ballot races. And we won't have to spend a lot of money here trying to salvage a corrupt and flawed candidate like Ken Paxton, who will likely lose. And even if he doesn't lose, we'll end up taking down a lot of the down ballot races with him.
Paxton took to social media to call out spending on Cornyn's primary campaign. In a post referencing last week's Oscars, Paxton posted, quote, "No one deserves an Academy Award more than John Cornyn for his performance as a conservative in $70 million worth of TV ads." I want to go a little deeper. We're joined now by Lauren McGaughy, the Texas politics correspondent for the New York Times. Welcome to our show. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I want to start here. You've been following Cornyn and Paxton for years. This race has been expensive. It's been personal. And from your reporting, what's really driving this tension?
I mean, I think these two men are on the opposite sides of the conservative split right now. We have Mr. Paxton, who we know well here in Texas, but is becoming more of a national figure and is a darling of the MAGA movement. In fact, I've often said he was MAGA before Trump was MAGA. And then we have Cornyn, who, you know, has worked for a very long time to work across the aisle in the Senate. He's very much a workhorse. But he's being painted as, you know, maybe a little too accommodating, maybe a little not enough pro-Trump. And so I just think that split right now is what is on display in the Republican Party, and they exemplify that split at this moment.
Well, President Trump has said nice things about both these men.
That's right.
But he stopped short with giving an endorsement to either one of them. What kind of effect has that had on their campaigns?
Oh, a ton. So right now, everyone's watching Trump, which I was told by someone on Twitter is, you know, exactly what he wants, but I can't speak to what the president's needs are. But, you know, Mr. Cornyn and Mr. Paxton, the endorsement could be what puts them over. There was an expectation that Paxton would finish first in the primary. He did not. Senator Cornyn did. And so that really emboldened the senator to go after the president's endorsement very strongly, but he didn't get it. And so now there's all this jockeying. We're seeing General Paxton put ads in Florida,
Yeah.
so it was specifically targeting the president. And he'll be at CPAC next week making his case for why he's the real conservative candidate. So it's really down to what the president wants at this point.
Yeah, well, let's talk about CPAC. That's the Conservative Political Action Conference. It takes place, it's happening next week in Grapevine, Texas, which is right near Dallas. Paxton is scheduled to speak there. How significant are these type of events for these campaigns?
They've become very significant, and CPAC in particular has become kind of the premier event. I spoke with the Cornyn campaign and asked why he was not planning to attend, and they are debating the SAVE Act right now in the Senate, which is another thing that the president's endorsement is hinging on. The president wants the SAVE Act passed, and so Cornyn says he wants to be in DC for those votes. But also the head of CPAC has endorsed Paxton, so probably wouldn't be a very friendly place for Cornyn to come and try to make some inroads.
Well, let's look at this through a wider lens.
Yeah.
I mean, this has been a contentious campaign. What does this really say about Republican politics in our state?
Yeah, a lot of people are trying to phrase this as like the old guard, new guard divide, but Paxton has been around for a long time too. So I think what I'm going to be watching is if the president does endorse, which, we expect that's probable after the SAVE Act is over, how much will that endorsement mean? That could be a bellwether for whether, the Trump nod really still matters that much here in Texas, or whether his power is waning slightly. If he goes for one of these two men and they don't end up winning in the primary, it will be very surprising. But I think just right now, everyone's looking at whether we're going to have a continuation of a man who's been in the Senate for a very long time, who's argued he's gotten a lot done for Texas, or someone that wants to take that position in a completely different direction, become more of an activist member of the Senate, and probably one that won't work as often across the aisle.
Okay, Lauren McGaughy with the New York Times, thank you for your insight.
You're welcome.
Latino leaders say their community is in shock after explosive allegations against Cesar Chavez.
It is such a devastating blow, but I think for many women living in the patriarchy, it's sadly maybe not a surprise.
Renaming streets is just the beginning, why some leaders say the real issue is supporting survivors of sexual abuse. 500,000 people in major refineries at risk. The new warning from leaders about the Corpus Christi water supply, why it could hit crisis levels in just a few weeks. Last week, we told you about growing concern over the city of Corpus Christi running dangerously low on water. Now city leaders have a new message. They're telling citizens that Corpus Christi could enter a water emergency as early as May. The emergency could lead to water cuts that would impact people living there and the state's oil industry. City documents show Corpus Christi could enter a level 1 water emergency within months. A water emergency declaration means the city won't have enough supply to meet the demand for 500,000 people by November. There's still a chance the city can meet the demand if several new water projects come online in time. But during Tuesday's city council meeting, residents made their frustrations clear.
I have watched the leadership with a mix of disbelief and frustration as we approach a water crisis that many know was both predictable and preventable.
If the city enters a water emergency, both households and the energy industry could face water reductions. Bob Paulison is the director of the Coastal Bend Industry Association, made up of refiners, chemical producers, and oil terminals. He said his members are working to balance water reduction and continuing operations.
You can drive the situation to a point where it's no longer possible to continue to operate.
Corpus Christi entered the situation because of a prolonged drought. And it's not the only city at risk. Water experts warn that if Texas enters a drought of record, the state could face longer-term water shortages.
I think the areas that are especially susceptible to this water supply deficit include South, Central, and West Texas.
The good news is Texans approved billions for water investments. Those investments will take some time, but experts argue the state should revisit its water planning.
Identifying where are the critical areas that need regional water projects to meet future economic and industrial growth and residential growth.
As Corpus Christi focuses on short-term solutions, the long-term goal is a desalination plant. The City Council will meet again next month to approve a nearly $1 billion facility that is facing public backlash. Data from the Texas Water Development Board shows close to 60 desalination plants operating in Texas. Many of them are nowhere near the ocean. For example, El Paso is home to the largest inland desal plant in the country. Like other inland desal plants, the K. Bailey Hutchinson plant converts brackish groundwater into drinkable water. The plant can produce more than 27 million gallons of fresh water daily. A civil rights icon's legacy is under fire, and the political fallout is just beginning. How the accusations are reshaping conversations on representation and whose names we honor. Republicans argue the Supreme Court got it wrong by guaranteeing undocumented children access to public education. We look at the push to overturn the ruling and what it could mean for families and schools in Texas. The state of Texas will not observe the Cesar Chavez holiday at the end of March. Governor Greg Abbott made the announcement after accusations of sexual abuse came to light against the late civil rights leader. The governor vowed to work with Texas lawmakers to remove Cesar Chavez Day from state law altogether. For decades, Chavez stood as an icon of labor rights and Latino heritage, but accusations that he sexually abused women and girls have people across Texas pushing to remove his name from streets, schools, and other facilities previously named in his honor. In Dallas, council members called on the city to consider renaming Cesar Chavez Boulevard. A similar discussion is underway in Austin, where his name is on one of the most well-known streets in the city. One local group that pushed to name the street after Chavez following his death in 1993 now wants to change it back to its original name, First Street. Several local leaders have spoken up to say they support a new name. For perspective, we want to share part of a conversation with two Central Texas leaders. Anchors Sally Hernandez and Avery Travis spoke with Austin City Council member Vanessa Fuentes and Travis County Attorney Delia Garza to discuss the impact of the accusations and the need for action.
I know it's a sensitive topic, but it's a very important one to have today. Let's talk about what you're hearing from your Austin constituents about what they have just heard about this revelation.
That's right. I mean, the shock amongst the Latino community was immediate and it was fast. And certainly there's still a lot of processing going on. But one thing that was clear is that folks want to see Cesar Chavez renamed. It's a prominent street in our city. And we want to ensure that ultimately, as we go through a renaming process, that we continue to uplift the Latino community, the Chicano movement, and the labor movement.
Have you seen any official proposals to make that change, or what might that process look like?
Well, the great thing is that a majority of council members have already spoken out publicly that they support a renaming of Cesar Chavez. So we're in alignment and moving forward on that end. What it will look like, we're still kind of figuring out the details on the process. What is overwhelmingly part of how we move forward is we want to make sure that there's a process in which our community can provide feedback and input.
Delia, what goes through your head? Because it's very obvious that he was a prominent figure for many Latinos. We have two Latina leaders sitting next to us. What went through your head when you first heard about all this?
Yeah, first I just want to recognize the survivors that came forward and how incredibly challenging that must have been for them. And especially when you think of Dolores Huerta, someone that many Latinas see as someone so powerful and strong, and to see that this even affected her. I also think situations like this are an opportunity for us to highlight the sexual violence epidemic that women and girls face not only in this country but in this world, and it's ongoing. 1 in 3 women have been a survivor of violence, sexual violence. So I mean, sitting here with 4 women, that means one of us or maybe all of us have had that experience. And so as far as for the Latino community, I think so many of us are still processing it. It is such a devastating blow, but I think for many women living in the patriarchy, it's sadly maybe not a surprise. And that we really use moments like this to center this around survivors and victims. Even in our community right now, organizations like SAFE and the Eloise House, who provides forensic exams for survivors, is seeing significant cuts from the federal government. And so I think this is an opportunity to, show that we support our survivors, especially in this community. And then just, as Latina leaders, we have seen that the Latino community doesn't have sometimes the political power And the farm workers movement was that opportunity for us. We had this collective voice. And so it's devastating, and I know many are still processing it, but one thing that I love about our Latino community is that we always rise after these challenges. And so we have an opportunity to give these survivors voices when they want to use their voice, and make sure we're supporting organizations right here in Austin Travis County that support that community.
And thank you for listing off some of those local resources for people at home. I do want to ask, are you all aware of any claims of abuse being investigated here in the Austin area connected to or in relation to some of the things we're now hearing and that are coming out?
You know, I think this news is so new for so many. I personally have not heard of anything happening here in Austin Travis County. From the New York Times story, it seems the majority happened in California.
There are a lot of celebrations that are named after Cesar Chavez and celebrating his legacy. Have you heard of any pushback when it comes to canceling those celebrations or to renaming the street back to South First?
I think people certainly understand why it was canceled. I mean, just going through the shocking incidents and the trauma and the harm that have been endured by young girls and women in association with Cesar Chavez, it makes sense for there to be the cancellations of the marches throughout the state and throughout the country. What I'm hearing from folks is, as we move forward, is folks want an acknowledgement that the labor movement is much more than just one person. So we still want to find a way that we can uplift what our farm workers were able to accomplish for dignity and fair wages and safe working sites. And we want to continue to have moments and movements and really marches available to honor the plight.
Anything else you want Austin communities to know if they're, as you said, still processing, still taking in this news? Any last message for them?
You know, I'll just say, you know, some of us, me included, are just a generation from parents who were migrant farm workers. And you know, knowing the challenges that they faced, and you know, but you know, we're products of that. We're products of these resilient, hardworking people, and I just hope people, and I know they will. They'll still take pride in that, pride in the resilient people that our Latino community is, and we will again rise to this occasion. And we need to do that right here in our community and support the organizations that support survivors.
That's right. And then for me, I would just add that Cesar Chavez Street in Austin is 4.5 miles. It is much longer than your average neighborhood street. So going through this renaming process is one that is important. And for me, what's top of mind as a local leader is that we continue to uplift the Latino community. Over a third of Austin is Latino, and that we find a way to honor and uplift the labor movement. Would love to have it named after a woman leader. But we'll see how that goes.
Fuentes suggested renaming the street in honor of Dolores Huerta. That's an option being considered by leaders in several other cities facing calls to rename locations that currently honor Chavez. Huerta coined the famous slogan, "Si se puede," which means yes, you can. She worked alongside Chavez. They're both credited with co-leading a movement that led to better wages and working conditions for farm workers. Earlier this week, Huerta revealed she was sexually abused by Chavez, leading to the birth of 2 children. Huerta said she stayed silent for 60 years out of concern news of being abused would hurt the farm worker movement. Should undocumented children keep their guaranteed right to attend public schools? It's a debate that could reshape education in Texas and around the country. We dig deeper into the political showdown. A 40-year-old Supreme Court decision is getting a second look. Plyler versus Doe guarantees every child the right to a free public education, no matter their immigration status. Now, some Republicans want to overturn that decision. In 1975, the Texas legislature passed a law that allowed the state to withhold money from any school district educating undocumented children. The U.S. Supreme Court eventually weighed in and ruled that every child had a right to a basic education, no matter their immigration status. Then, in 2011, the Obama administration sent this letter to school districts across the country. It told school districts they could not ask children about their immigration status when they enrolled, out of fear it would prevent kids from attending school. Flash forward to today. and Republicans are pushing to overturn that ruling.
And finally alleviate Texans and Americans alike from this burden.
A House Judiciary Subcommittee hearing on Capitol Hill Wednesday looked to examine the, quote, adverse effects of the Plyer v. Doe Supreme Court ruling. Republicans believe Texas taxpayer dollars are being diverted away from American-born students and argue school districts are suffering. But it's hard to prove that without concrete data.
If states are required to educate illegal immigrant students, they must be allowed to identify the student population status to fully understand and address the adverse effects of Plyer v. Doe.
Overturning the ruling could allow some states to deny certain kids from a basic public education.
I think it would just be completely devastating for kids.
Carlos Eduardo Cornejo Quezada immigrated with his family from Mexico to Texas when he was just 1. He's a product of public school. He believes it would be unfair to immigrant families who want the best for their child.
Many undocumented immigrants are taxpayers with their ITIN numbers and contribute to the same education system they hope their kids can access.
Some others believe denying any kids from a basic education can have a snowball effect.
Because kids out of school have a tendency to attract their peers to leave school as well.
The Supreme Court ruling in the 80s was a narrow 5-4 decision. If the issue was brought back to the current High Court, Republicans feel confident it would be overturned. Legislation currently being considered in Tennessee could spark legal challenges that end up before the Supreme Court. The bill would allow public schools to refuse to enroll students who are unlawfully present in the United States. The Tennessee State Senate is scheduled to take up this bill later this week. Well, thank you again for joining us here on State of Texas. I'm Dylan McKim. We'll be back here next week to bring you an in-depth look at Texas politics.